Well, in a few weeks, Chicago will become the center of the universe with the Democratic National Convention. And I don't say this lightly. War is coming to the Midwest. Venezuelan illegal immigrants have taken over Chicago ahead of the DNC. And our next guest has uncovered incredible information showing how Venezuelan gangs are affecting the entire Chicagoland area. The mainstream media, of course, is largely ignoring this story, not covering it at all. And he has also uncovered new evidence from the Chicago PD directly, showing two different Venezuelan shelters that are running human sex trafficking operations right out of those shelters. Terry Newsome is our guest. He's the host of Behind the Enemy Lines podcast, and perhaps no one knows more about what's going on the ground in Chicago than Terry. Terry, welcome to the show. Great to have you here on Redacted.
No, thank you for having me, Clayton. I appreciate it.
Well, and I appreciate all the work that you've been doing. And of course, you've been working very closely with our good friend, JJ Carroll, and really painting a picture of what's happening in the Midwest. You know, a lot of people think of what's happening at the southern border. They look at those images at the southern border and they think that's where it's happening. But Chicago has really become ground zero for the illegal immigration disaster in the United States. Can you kind of paint a picture of how bleak it is?
Yeah, sure. You made a great point there about Chicago being ground zero. So say if Trump wins and he stops everything at the border, well, we're just getting started in Chicago, Clayton. You know what I mean? It's just the damage is done. They're already here. They're being spread from Chicago beyond throughout the Chicagoland area and the state of Illinois for that matter. And, I first became aware of it in December. I live in the western suburbs. There's train tracks that go from all these different western suburbs into the city of Chicago. So after Brandon Johnson came up with this idea to say he was going to impound the buses if they got dropped off in the inner city, they just started dropping them off at the suburbs. And mine was being one of the first ones. And they would drop bus loads off. So I would get calls from the community folks and I go there and I start, confronting them, or I don't say confronting them, but I'd film it and so forth. So the first bus, it was probably 75% men with a mix of families. The second bus was like 95% men, military age men. One of the first things one individual did as soon as he stepped foot off the Mexican border into my community is flashed the Tren del Agua gang sign at me. Proudly flashed it at me. And at that time, I knew it was a gang sign, right? You don't have to be, a law enforcement. I knew it was a gang sign. I just didn't know what type of gang sign it was at that time because it was in December. It wasn't until January, if you remember, the New York Police Department, a cop was beat up by 6 of them, and the guy gave the finger. And then all of a sudden, the reporters in New York said this is the violent prison gang. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's got the tattoo, everything. So I'm like, that guy is Tren del Agua, and he was bragging about his gang coming into Chicago. Within 20 feet, he got off the bus, So, I started following there. And then, so what they would do is they would drop them off at all these nice suburbs. They drop them off and they kind of rotate, where they drop them off at the northwestern suburbs, western suburbs. And then there's it's called Union Station and Ogilvie Station. So then I started going there on New Year's Day. I went there and there was a Metro police officer and I'm sitting there because they get off there and just kind of curious of what happens from when they get dropped off in the inner city, right? And I go up to this Metro cop and I said, is this where the illegals? He's a Spanish cop with tattoos on his side. He was like, he looked like a gang member. This police officer, a Metro police officer. I said, is this where the illegals get dropped off from the train station? He looks at me and goes, well, what do you mean? I go, well, I live in the western suburbs. They're dropping them off there and I'm told they're coming in here. He goes, I guess sometimes. And I said, do they have a host? Do they have a handler that picks them up? He goes, well, what do you mean? Like with an attitude. I said, well, somebody greeting them? He goes, I guess sometimes. And I went and sat down. And I swear, not less than a minute later, because I was going to sit there for a little while and go home, right? The reason that cop was there that I was talking to, the door's open. And here comes Venezuelans with their little blankets from the Red Cross. He was there greeting them in Spanish. And I'm like, look at him. The guy lied to me, right? Why are you lying to me, right? And so what happens is that they take them from there. They come in by plane as well. We could talk about that. But they take them from there. And then I followed them. And I had Venezuelan guys, with their face covered and stuff in the train station, flashing V and stuff at me. Again, not necessarily the gang signs, but if Venezuelan's so good, then why are you flashing V's in my face, as I'm walking there? And then the sergeant tried to intimidate me from not filming them. He's like, he goes, you have to leave. I'm like, no, I don't. It's a train station. Yeah, yes, you do. He's another Hispanic police officer. And I said, this is a public space. He goes, I'm going to call Amtrak. I go, go ahead, call Amtrak. And obviously nothing happened. So then I stood there and I followed him and these two other Spanish people from the Office of Emergency Management, which is basically Chicago's FEMA, right? It's Chicago's FEMA.
Right.
These two people came in, they talked to the police officers, and then they escorted them out to the south side of Union Station, and there's a school bus sitting there. And then they start putting them into the school bus. And I'm standing on the sidewalk. I'm not in anyone's way. And this woman's, yelling at me. I got this all on film, saying that I can't film. I said, yes, I can. No, you don't. I go, yes, I can. I'm on the sidewalk. You don't have permission to film. The city has a contract with the bus company, and there's no, I go, it doesn't matter what contract. I'm standing in the street. Then she went and got the same two cops to come, and they confronted me, right? And he goes, well, how would you like it if, your children were being filmed? I would be upset. I go, I wouldn't smuggle my children into a country illegally, right? So
Right.
that's the MO of multiple different locations. And I'm sure JJ talked about it. They try to intimidate, harass, and scare us from filming the truth. It doesn't matter if it's at the intake center, the Standard Club, the Inn of Chicago. And by the way, we just found out the Standard Club, which is on the Mag Mile of Chicago. It's where the shopping district where everyone comes to. The Standard Club is a historic 150-year-old building that was initially built by the Jewish community and changed hands. But both of them were coincidentally bought in 2022 in the midst of this crisis by the same person. So now we're looking into, now they're full, right? Capacity. These dumpy hotels are in these nice areas of Chicago, one right next to the Department of Justice building, one in the Magnificent Mile, are full of illegals. And they have NGOs in there managing them.
So these NGOs, the Catholic Charities, and others that have been facilitating this invasion into Chicago, and we are about to see the DNC here in a few weeks, and multiple sources have been saying this is going to be a disaster. What you're seeing unfolding in the next few weeks. Can you paint a picture, help our audience understand where the DNC will be located and why this is such a tinderbox moment right now?
Yeah, sure. One other thing, Ben Berquam, you probably know him. He came into Chicago. I took him to the side. I grew up in the southwest side of Chicago, and there's a Holiday Inn there that it looks brand new. They remodeled it, right? So I found out from my friends that they're moving illegals there. So me and Ben went there, and sure enough, it's the same security guards, the NGO guys. They wouldn't let us in. They got signs in Spanish and Arabic at this place now, Spanish and Arabic. So, I guess that's kind of telegraphing what's going to go on there. So this was built to move these Venezuelans away from the United Center. The United Center, the Blackhawks and the Bulls and stuff. You're probably familiar with that. And then during the daytime, it's going to be at the McCormick Place, which is right off of Lake Michigan. So they're going to have activities there. And then in the evening, they're going to have it at the United Center. So they're trying to clear out some of the mess as best they can. But one thing that's kind of interesting is, and JJ and Ryan were at the intake center, with me. I took them over there. And just south of the intake center, it's called Tent City. There's like 35 orange tents. You might have saw them. Been there for a long, long time. Homeless people, ex-military people are upset that, like when these Venezuelans come, not even a block north, like a football field north of there is the intake center. So wherever they come in by plane or bus or train, they go there. They got 6 tents. They're not tents. They're like white structures, very nice. And they have anywhere from 2 to 10 buses. In the wintertime, they're warming buses. In the summertime, they're cooling buses. These people that I interviewed in February were telling me how they went in January during the deep freeze, tried to get on those warming buses, and they wouldn't let them because they weren't Venezuelans. One guy said, I had 5
Americans who are homeless in Chicago, veterans who are trying to get on these warming buses, are being told, you can't get on these buses because we've got illegal Venezuelans sitting here.
Yes. And then, like when JJ and, same stuff, they try to, the same NGO guys, the one guy's from Helping Hands. I did a facial recognition and we found it and I scanned it and got his LinkedIn. He's from this company. He's like 30 people and they're like the PMO, the quarterbacks of this center, the intake center, right? And same guy every time. He's from Texas too. So we got these outsider NGOs making a fortune to help destroy part of our, our Chicagoland and our state. And they're making money off it, and they try to intimidate and harass us to tell us we can't stand on Polk Street. Tell us we're not allowed. And then I had a guy from the CTA in a little minivan while we're filming the buses. And yeah, JJ was there. And the guy's telling me I can't film the buses that are on the street unless I get permission from the CTA, just like the other lady said to me. I mean, they're nuts. And what are they trying to hide if they think they're doing something good? So for the DNC convention that's coming up, Pritzker cleared out all these homeless people, tore down their tents, cleaned it up, put an 8-foot fence surrounding the whole area. So granted, you don't want people living like that, and they didn't care before, but all of a sudden they tore all this down, cleaned it up, put this fence in. Then I went back to the intake center just to check it out, and sure enough, they got brand new sidewalks, that weren't there when JJ was there. New sidewalks. And this is kind of like a cruddy area. I mean, it's like not necessary. The only biggest thing there is now the intake center, which was an empty lot until they allocated it for this intake center. And they got special curbs for these buses and little plastic pole. None of that was there. So I'm just speculating that I bet you Pritzker is going to take some of these radical leftists. That's why he cleaned, because it's 2.5 miles away from the United Center. So it's not that close, right? I'm assuming he's going to do little tours. Why else would he fix the sidewalk up? And, it wasn't necessary. So they're making it look better than it is. And so that's being done for the United Center. Now, you'll see in the... Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You'll see in the news, they're talking about... I have friends on the police department, right? They say it's going to be a cluster, senior people. Some guy's ready to retire, right? They say it's going to be a mess, right? It's a mess. And things are changing. As a matter of fact, I talked to this guy last year. He goes, they're changing like daily. And especially the stuff with Harris and all this other, crazy stuff that's affecting it. We're going to have the inner perimeter, and other agencies are going to handle the exterior perimeter. I imagine the Secret Service and whoever else, right? And these guys, if you see the local media in Chicago, and they're talking of preparation for the DNC, a lot of it's that fluffy bullshit on how they're being taught, the police officers, to handle these protests and how to handle them in the right way, right? You don't hear about protecting the police officers and stuff, right? They're more concerned of, handling it the right way. And which is kind of funny, the anarchists, the Antifa, the Hamas, they're putting it out there. We're going to make this greater than 1968. They're going to make it, they're promoting it. They're promoting about violence. They're promoting about going on the CTA, going door to door. They're openly promoting this stuff out there. So now
it reminds me of the UK right now, where you're having, the two-tiered justice system right now. You're having the police being told basically stand down, allow these machete-wielding gangs to run rampant. But if you criticize them and call them rapists, that's where the police will come to your house and make arrests, if you criticize them. And so it sounds like Chicago is being sort of organized in the same way. The Chicago PD being told handle these protesters, these Antifa and others, as with kid gloves.
Yeah, and that concerns me for my police officer friends, right? And then they got to worry about their job, right? So, they asked. Yeah, I live in DuPage County, which is the second largest county in Illinois. So they reached out because they're supposed to try to collaborate and help each other, right? On important, events. They asked for 300 officers, and the sheriff said no. What would you want to send your police officers into Chicago where they support the criminals over the police, right? I mean, he said, no, we're not going to do it. I mean, I wouldn't want to go out there when you have these constraints and you got to be worried. You got to protect yourself and then also try to protect your job at the same time. I mean, their hands are going to be constrained. And if you think about 1968, who was the mayor of Chicago then? Daley. Remember he said about looting, shoot to kill? I don't know if you remember that, because I grew up here. Mm-hmm. When there was looting and stuff that happened, all the burned out up and down Madison Street. Matter of fact, by the way, it would be ironic. United Center is right there where the riots were and where all these burn. When I was a kid, we would drive and look. It looked like a war zone, Clayton. So 1968, I graduated 79. We would drive down and it looked like, as I look back now and I read the buildings were just, they left it like that forever. I'm not saying it's going to happen like that, but what I am saying is that people knew how Mayor Daley was, right? Well, now they know how Mayor Brandon Johnson is. So to me, I think they think they're going to get away with way, way, way more. The difference is that these Antifa guys, the anarchists, the Hamas, they're all coming together. They're well-funded, as you know, right? These guys are well-funded. And the Chicago Antifa, I got a story coming on. And the Chicago Antifa guys are coordinating. They're the quarterbacks of coordinating these different organizations together. And then lay on top of that, you've got all these African-American folks that are voting for Trump. And you probably saw some of the stuff that, what JJ had you interview with, or saw some of his interviews with these leaders and stuff. So there's going to be a big contingent of African-Americans that are supposed to show up to protest the Democrats for ruining the city of Chicago. And I'm worried.
Well, that's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm worried about. That's where this war will come from, right? You have the African American population in Chicago that's absolutely fed up with liberal policies, which have destroyed their jobs, their community, have invited all of these illegal Venezuelans into that area. They're going to go down there to protest. I think you've said it and others. They're just one gunshot away from war breaking out.
Yeah. Right before I got on your show, my friends send me stuff, right, from all over Chicago. I got a message, a little story, a knife fight. My friend said it. It was like gangs of New York, 20 Venezuelan, I'm assuming they're Venezuelan immigrants, and a knife fight right there off the Mac Mile. So they're probably associated with the inn of Chicago. And they're running like knives trying to stab each other and round cars. So this stuff is just beginning. I mean, they just got here. They're getting settled in. They're getting organized. So I live in the western suburbs. There's a mall called Oak Brook Mall, high end. It's like how you say my mall. It's close to my house. And that's where we go. That's where my children go. My wife goes, and my mom. And so they had up through June, there was 150 Venezuelans arrested there. And some of them 5-6 times, right? So DuPage County doesn't put up with that crap, but they're constrained with this goofy laws that Pritzker put in place, right? And so some of them, so they're organized, they're coordinated. Like, so for instance, they're taking things and they're working with somebody to sell this stuff, like big KitchenAid mixers that women, fancy stuff that a Venezuelan doesn't certainly need. And they're catching them. There's another suburb right off the railroad tracks. 12 of them came in. They're younger. 2 of the 12 were arrested. The 10 of the 12, they sent them back. They were stealing bikes from the pool and other neighborhoods, and they caught all these idiots. And then it's a very woke, liberal, high-end, very high-end income. And the community members, the woke ones that were okay with all this liberal stuff, are now complaining that the police didn't arrest them. Well, their hands are constrained. Matter of fact, one of the cops is my buddy. He's like, we don't even know of these minors, if they are minors, and if we have real names. They put them on the train and send them back to their shelters. So this is going to expand. Another woman, Carol Stream, her 42-year-old husband, and they have a 4-year-old kid. This Venezuelan stabbed her in front of the 4-year-old kid so many times she was almost decapitated. And I could go on and on. Like I so 6 blocks from my house, the gas station, the Speedway that we use, the sheriff warned people that Venezuelans are going in there. And you say if you go inside, I never go inside, we use a credit card out there. But those who go inside, there'll be a Venezuelan woman that'll approach them and ask them broken English, can you lend me $5? I ran out of gas. And they go through your car. So they start catching them, and they're going in packs and doing this in the gas stations.
This is Biden's America. It's a Biden-Harris America, and the DNC at the center of it all in Chicago right now. Terry, I want to check back with you here as we get closer to the DNC and during the DNC. Would love to have you on here. No one has a better pulse of what's happening right now in the heartland and in Chicago and the heart of the illegal immigration invasion in the United States.
Could I give you a couple stats I just got? Do we have time just real quickly?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I ran FOIA requests for immigrant arrests from 2021 through 2024, right? And they listed all the countries. I was kind of shocked. The police are actually against this, Chicago police. So I'll just point out Venezuela, for instance. Colombia is up 280%. Venezuela in 2021, there was only 6 Venezuelans arrested in the city of Chicago. 2022, there was 26. 2023, there was 1,030. 2024, halfway through our year, 1,720. So we're going to have 3,500. Now, keep in mind, they don't arrest all of them, Clayton, right? And then the other one that you mentioned, the Standard Club. So as I learned more about this, the first in Chicago, I got 230 police reports, incident reports. And then as I learned more from each center, then I'm like, okay, I'm asking specifically for the Standard Club. This time I said, can you give me all the incident reports and arrests associated with the Standard Club and the addresses of those associated with the Standard Club? I got 706 for 12 months. That's 2 a day. That's 2 a day for just one. We used to have upwards of 30 locations. So this stuff is being underestimated in such a big way. I mean, I could talk, forever, as by talking to JJ and stuff. It's crazy, and it's going to collapse us in a big way in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois.
Well, thank you for the work that you're doing on this to shed a light on this. Even if the corporate media won't cover it, we will. And we appreciate all the work that you're doing there on the Behind the Enemy Lines podcast and all of the work that you're doing with these FOIA requests and tapping into your sources at the Chicago PD. Again, Terry, we'll check back with you here in the next couple of weeks. This is going to be, again, Chicago will be center of the universe. And stay safe there. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Clayton.